one of the really cool things about Mortal Kombat and about some of the really great games. If you have a really great winning concept, often, they got that game running in like a month. A lot of modern games, it seems like they spend all their time in this graphical wilderness trying to get everything looking so cool, and then they've got like 3 weeks left to figure out what the game is.
We had a very fast iteration. I would get art from John, we put it in, and an hour later, we were playing it.
And actually hit that.
Raiden wins.
The first time you play it, you just go, this is incredible. You knew you were on the right course.
Ed was just eager to have people in and give them feedback on stuff.
A lot of times it was just someone you'd have someone in your office to look at something and they go, hey, what about this? And then maybe that's a good idea.
Ideas could come and be turned into reality in the same day.
Yeah,
basically.
in fact, I remember we would record a little bit of footage.
Okay, one more time. All right, that's good.
And it wasn't until Ed actually got the frames and could get them in the game, not until that point would we know that we were making the right choices.
When we were making this game, Street Fighter II was the big rage, and I was a huge admirer of that game. At the same time, I felt like there was a little bit more ceiling room in terms of how outrageous you can get with the moves. We wanted characters using magic, disappearing, teleporting, doing all these kind of unpredictable things. And a lot of the moves were constructed from kind of almost like scraps. Kano's ball was from his flipping animation. Scorpion's teleport was from his jump punch animation.
Scorpion throwing a spear and pulling somebody in,
It was something that I remember I thought of that was just an outrageous move that wasn't seen in any other fighting game.
Right, although we used to try to do the wind up and throw is usually like 5 frames maybe. Like if you went like
Yeah, something like that.
It was one of those spur of the moment, inspirational ideas that ended up becoming like very signature, very iconic to Mortal Kombat.
The way he was implementing them was so interesting because he uses the frames of animation, and he was, as a programmer, would move them around to do things. Like he would define how things animated across the screen.
When we did the Liu Kang flying kick, you got to stop him once he makes contact, and it'll make the impact feel like it's a lot more intense and more forceful. Iterating again and again how important it is that we get the timing of all these things correct.
Other than, how John would define what the actual frames of animation were, Ed defined how things moved around.
There's little nuances that are put into the game that a lot of players don't identify, but they just know that it feels good, and they're not sure why.
I think that was a hard lesson to learn back in the day of, hey, I want this animation to be really smooth, and I want it to be like 100 frames. And it's like, no, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And it has to feel good.
It's got to have impact. Impact and drama, that's what people are going to respond to.
Get over here, the uppercut was such a big, ridiculous reaction.
Getting the animation of the character, launching them into the air, putting the blood on it, being knocked down, and
they shake the screen.
And the sound call that Dan Forden did.
It's like, we need a really big sound for a hit. It's like, okay, so I made a really big sound for a hit. The scream of the attacker. The victim, yelling as he flies away. Put all that stuff together, it's like, boom. It's like, oh my God.
I remember we were just walking around just doing uppercuts again and again and going, God, that feels so good, that feels so good.
That's how people knew when something was cool in any game. People were gonna be like, holy smokes. And now you know you have something. And then, so that, and then the fatality.
Raiden wins.
Like, fatalities were the big thing that made us a hit.
You know what would be a cool ass move?
One more time. All right, that's cool.
Do ninjas ever have this sort of?
That was cool, dude. What was that?
You pull something with like an arrow or whatever, and stuck into the other guy, and it dragged him across the
Didn't you say?
Right, although we used to try to do the wind up and throw is usually like 5 frames maybe. Like if you went like
Yeah, something like that. You can do the wind up. Maybe something more like you do like this, because you know what I'll do? I'll like trail the rope.
right. Can you make where you throw the plane like the thing to hit the guy in the chest, you know? Because we have a bunch of frames and we use that as a drag. So when you stop, your arm is parallel with your chest as opposed to way down here.
Okay, so try to do it chest level.
Okay.
A little bit more of a wind up. So that would be alright, because I could do like a little thing of the rope, more like this, like a little snake thing. Oh, you know what? Wait, you know what we should do? After he does that, we should have him do.
Well, I think you have to do like
yeah, okay. So, do the throw, and then we need some kind of throw back.
Put your hands together and do that.
Okay. Yeah.
When you try to wind up with a little more like right now you're kind of just going.
Okay, one more time.
What we should do, John?
What?
Is if we had 2 stance frames for him.
Okay.
One for the old guy. I mean, it'll cost us 7 frames, but it'll just make him see.
Yeah, alright. Okay, see that.
It'll have to be kind of similar because they're both going to be going to the same punch.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But different enough that they're fighting each other.
We'll do that one stance you just did, and we need one slightly different. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the yellow of your palette and have another ninja. And but we're going to have 2 different stances. One ninja's going to have one, the other's going to have another. But we're going to use all the same punches. All right, so let's do the first stance. Try doing this sound like this. Yeah.
A little slower.
A little slower, yeah. Okay. That's good. I should be able to get some. And then let's do the second one.
The other hand kind of the same, but the one that was off the corn, try it like, one was on the middle. A little more tucked into your
More like this. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something kind of like that.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, keep it open. Keep it open. You want to move one?
Yeah.
Try
a little more body movement there. And try to like rock in a repeated manner. Something. Yeah. When you just go.
Raiden wins.
Street Fighter had this feature which I loved and hated at the same time. You can get your opponent dizzy. I loved the fact when I was the aggressor and saw my opponent dizzy, you're almost like salivating at this free hit that you get. And then I hated the idea of being the victim. I put the dizzy feature at the end of the fight. You just get like one last hit. And everybody would do an uppercut as your kind of like payoff. We had a feature that we had dropped in the game where Shang Tsung, when he would defeat you, he would take a sword out and he would like cut your head off. And we weren't going to use it because we were out of space, but we still had the animations of all the characters falling to their knees without a head. One day I just kind of piecemealed the idea of Johnny Cage uppercutting the opponent with this uppercut animation and then using the animations of the character with his head, you know, cut off.
Johnny Cage wins. Flawless victory fatality.
I showed it to John, I showed it to the rest of the team, and everybody lost their mind, and we have to do this. The fact that we gave the players the ability to actually perform this kind of death blow, this kind of killing move, was really the birth of that idea. Some people were kind of like saying, I don't think we can get away with, you know, letting the player kill the other player. So we showed it to management, and they loved it.
I was surprised that we could include the level of you know, blood spattering around that we did, but of course, you know, when I was working on Mortal Kombat, I had just come from Smash TV and Total Carnage, and so, you know, the levels of blood spattering around the screen wasn't new to me.
From that point on, it was, okay, now we got to think of fatalities for all the characters. Some of the later characters, we actually grabbed animations of them. The heart out, Sonya doing the kiss of death and all that. The spine rip was a suggestion from John Tobias, referencing the movie Predator, and he said, why don't we do what they did in Predator where you pull the head out?
It's just like, oh, it was just like, oh my God.
And I remember saying, you know, I think that's probably crossing a line. We can't do it. Again, once we mocked it up, put it into the game, you know, there was no turning back. Everybody was just losing their mind.
And if anything, I felt like there was a bit of encouragement coming from other folks, you know, around the office, just because of the excitement that it drew from the players.
Everybody had to see this. No one had ever seen somebody removing someone's spinal cord. It's interesting. It made it so much more emotional. It just like, you're just like, yeah, you know, it's almost like that barbaric, primal emotion, like, yeah, you know, like.
We never performance captured a fatality for Liu Kang. But there were some animations that we had not used. One of them was this really cool cartwheel kick.
Whoa. Yeah, let's grab that again, even if we don't use it. Right. Yeah. We'll use it someplace.
We were both like, wow, we'll find a place for that. When it came time to do Liu Kang's fatality, we just spliced on the uppercut animation at the end of it, and it wasn't disgusting, it wasn't gross, it wasn't shocking.
Liu Kang wins.
And we just kind of reasoned with ourselves to say, well, Liu Kang's the hero, he's a Shaolin monk, he's peaceful, heroes don't kill people, so he just gave him a big uppercut. The process of adding fatalities into the game created so much energy in the whole studio in terms of their excitement for the game that we knew there was no backing out of it at that point.
Again, you're in a very small screen environment. You really have to exaggerate things. You have to make it just outrageous.
Scorpion wins.
We found the Holy Grail. It's like hitting the lottery. You know, it was something that we knew was going to be a signature part of Mortal Kombat.
I always judge a great game by how loud players get when they play. You yell at your friends and laugh, and the volume level is a measure of a good game for me.
And like I said, it was just fun and it was happy, and that may be the secret sauce.
again, when you see people playing the game and they're losing their minds and they're reacting
makes it
to it,
worth it, yeah.
there's your fuel.
Yeah.
There's your fuel for the next, for the next year to do it. So.
Who put the K in combat?
I did. I put the K in combat. I didn't come up with a name, but the K. This is my story. This is my memory, anyway.
I came up with mortal and the K instead of a C.
Yeah, well, you know what's going to happen? We're going to come up with all the names. We're all going to like them, and Ed's going to hate every one of them. Why? DEF CON is overused. Where? Everywhere. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, every time you watch War Game.
Ed's probably right behind me, isn't he? Like, oh, no, you didn't.
I think there's different stories going on. This is my recollection. It's been 30 years. We had a bunch of words written on a grease board.
We didn't have a name, so there was a bunch of possibilities, and one of them was Mortal Kombat.
Combat was written, I don't know if it had a K at the time, but Steve Ritchie, he said the words, what about Mortal Kombat?
They had combat on their whiteboard, but they were all a lot younger than me, and I'm not sure they ever heard of the phrase, they fought in Mortal Kombat, meaning somebody's going to die. It is what this game is about. It's Mortal Kombat.
And when he said that, from my perspective, it was like, whoa, there's the name right there. But I don't remember. Do you remember where the K came from?
Yeah, so what I remember was that. And then I think we went to legal with that name, Mortal Kombat, with a C. And they came back and said no, because they couldn't trademark it. Because it was, I guess, a common term. I remember it was John Vogel,
right,
who wrote the K.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, he might have done that before that conversation with the legal department.
As a joke, I was in the room with Ed, and as a joke, I changed the C to a K, and we were like laughing about it. Ha ha ha, that'd be funny, oh, it's so stupid. And then, so I said, all right, and I was putting it back to a C, and he goes, no, leave it, just leave the K. And so that's my memory as how it happened.
No, it was me, because the C was like, I don't know, just look cooler with the K. That's my thoughts.
And then I think we went back to legal and said, what about if it has a K? And then they went away, and then they came back and said, yes, you can. If you put a K on it, we can trademark it.
Actually, John Vogel's involvement does ring a bell for me.
I don't think I was enamored with the K. I thought it was goofy. And then when the realization hit that, well, if we change it with a K, we can use Mortal Kombat, it's like, oh, damn it. We're going to give it, like Vogel was right.
Yeah.
So whether you hate me or love me for it, now C's are now K's.
This is the sound area. This is where they make all the sounds for the games.
I am an audio director here at NetherRealm. The sound guy, you know, like, gotta get the voices in.
Dan shows you cool stuff every couple of days. He just comes in and you go, great, this is awesome. And he's a lot like Ed, where I just have this confidence that, you know, he's going to go away and come back with something spectacular.
That's the Johnny Cage Nut Crunch, I believe. Didn't someone make a candy bar, Johnny Cage Nut Crunch bar?
Again, we didn't know what we were doing, so it's just, okay, it's a fighting game, a lot of yelling, a lot of pain. You know, I don't think we had enough memory to record, okay, this is Scorpion's voice, this is Sub-Zero, so we just, like the men, we just mixed and matched. And I think Sonya was the only female in the first one, so we had, obviously, a female voice for that, and that was hers. But the rest of them, I think, would just be shared. We'd just get the talent, which was just people around the studio. It's not like we were hiring people to come in and do this.
We recorded me as the announcer, as Shang Tsung, you know, Liu Kang wins. Finish him.
Liu Kang wins. Fatality.
You know, fatality. All of those kind of classic sound calls was me, because we didn't have somebody with a better voice. Later on, we found Steve Ritchie, who had a much better voice in terms of like an announcer.
Baraka wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
I did a terrible Bruce Lee impersonation for Liu Kang. I think I did a yell for Kano.
Kano wins.
But I was also the voice of Scorpion, you know, yelling, "Get over here."
Get over here! Excellent. Come here!
I had worked with Dan Forden for many years at the time. I remember there was another sound guy who thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. And it kind of was, you know. Why would a ninja, you know, yell, "Get over here"? That's such like an American kind of thing.
Scorpion wins.
The idea was, again, the outrageous presentation. We really wanted to have, you know, just yelling and loudness in general into the game. From something that became with such silly roots and beginnings, you can't imagine Scorpion not having the "Get over here."
Ed would get me, this is back in the days of VHS, right? He would get me a playthrough of the background that I'd be working on. These are the instruments that I have, and look at the background, trying to think of like, well, what makes sense musically for this.
You try to imagine the action of playing the game and what the music's gonna do to like get you revved up.
Ever since, I don't know, the 70s, early 70s even, but always liked progressive rock a lot. So a friend of mine turned me on to King Crimson in high school, and that's been like a love of mine ever since. And so there's no doubt that there's a lot of King Crimson influence in the Mortal Kombat music that I wrote over the years. You know, like the very first tune, it's a melody in a diminished scale, harmonized at the fifth. So that sounds like a lot of King Crimson stuff. I think they pretty much liked everything I did. I don't remember doing over too many things. Now and then there would be like, you know, maybe you should try this instead of that, and some sort of corrective feedback. But for the most part, it's just we were just kind of making it up as we went along.
Testing a game was always one of the most fun parts of the job.
Yeah! In the earliest days of Mortal Kombat development, the only place you could play the game was in Ed's office. I would play the game every day. Ed would call me in to try something out, but other people, you know, would walk by Ed's office and see what he was working on and come in and play the game. And it was very valuable feedback, because that feedback was coming from guys like Eugene and Mark Turmel and George Petro and, you know, a lot of the other developers in the office at the time. Eventually, we would put a game out in the hallway for anybody to play. And so we'd get pinball designers would come down and play the game. There were folks who worked in the factory would come back and they'd play the game. And so we'd watch folks kind of play the game, and we'd take notes on sort of what the reaction. And then eventually that would lead to our first weekend test.
Testing the game in the arcade was such a critical part of determining what's working and what doesn't work.
Being on test is like one of the best parts, one of the most exciting parts of doing an arcade game.
Our first location test was a weekend test that we did, and that was done at an arcade called Times Square. It was a Friday night, so it was packed. The arcade was packed. And there was a crowd around the Street Fighter game. Street Fighter 2 was out at the time. And I just thought, there's no way these guys are coming over to play our game.
It was like this big event. The whole video game department would go, no matter whose game it was.
You'd roll a blank black cabinet into an arcade and just turn it on.
When we brought the first Mortal Kombat game out on test, there were 6 characters. We didn't have Sonya yet. A whole bunch of things just weren't working. And it was all about just kind of the fundamentals, the feel of it, the reaction to the visual, the reaction to blood.
That rush, that reverie, or that destruction and devastation if something doesn't work out, like, it's like, oh, we got to fix that, and it hurts, it feels bad.
I remember watching the first player, who was one of the guys from the crowd, walking over and looking at the attract mode and then dropping a token in and playing the game. And then I remember he walked over, tapped, fell on the shoulder, called him over, and then the other guy came over, and then they played the game. And then slowly people migrated over.
Whenever you would see a secret move come out, I remember the first time they saw Raiden do the dive move, you'd hear an audible, cheering or gasp. How did you do that? Easily the most enjoyable part for me was seeing and hearing reactions from players.
And at some point, Ed, I think, went in and he did a fatality. Kind of a thing, and then he walked away, now it's a big frenzy to figure out, like, how do you do that? How do you do that? And that's how people found out about the fatalities. Assuming my memory is correct, but I believe that's how it happened.
We would never perform fatalities in front of people because then someone's going to see you do it, right? Like, we wanted to launch the game and have people discover it naturally and organically.
Testing the first Mortal Kombat, there was a certain amount of anonymity, I guess you can say. Like, we could be in an arcade watching with a crowd of other people and be close enough in age to them that we just kind of blend in. What is this new game? And then you would get a candid response. Once you tell them that you worked on the game, then they're not going to say anything negative about it.
Across the street from Times Square was a pizza place, and so we would go across the street, get some pizza, and we would discuss, everything that we see across the
games. We just out anonymity, I guess you can say. Like, we could be in an arcade
because then someone's going to see you do it, right? Like, we wanted to launch the game and have people discover it naturally and organically.
Testing the first Mortal Kombat, there was a certain amount of anonymity, I guess you can say. Like, we could be in an arcade watching with a crowd of other people and be close enough in age to them that we just kind of blend in. What is this new game? And then you would get a candid response. Once you tell them that you worked on the game, then they're not going to say anything negative about it.
Across the street from Times Square was a pizza place, and so we would go across the street, get some pizza, and we would discuss, everything that we saw, what was cool, what was not cool, or what should we change? Hey, that was cool, and it was so much fun.
Seeing that first game on test was so reaffirming that we had something big. I saw players get so excited they just had to run They just had to run around like in circles.
By the end of that night, we had a pack of players around our game, hooting and hollering and just having a great time.
Players that we saw first see the game on a Friday, we saw them the entire weekend.
And I think at that point I thought, okay, we're gonna be okay.
Let's try that one you were talking about.
Okay.
Where she.
Could you like probably in the mat? You just do the handstand and then you go over. Yeah. All you have to do is just land right there.
Okay, can you do that or is that?
That's great. Is that be enough for you?
Yeah, let's try it one more time and just step up a little bit, just in case I need anything before, just in case.
Start a little bit further up.
Can you start on the mat?
Okay, now once from the middle, act like you're just getting into it. You don't even have to. This is so we can do the beginning part.
She should do it from the stance.
Right, from your stance.
Get like in your stance and just act like you're getting into it. Actually, she should step up.
Move to the middle like where you're.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good move. You'll be impressed when you see what we turn that into.
This was our first game that we were doing kind of as the leaders of the games. Mark Trammell was the kind of leader of the Smash TV team, and Eugene was kind of the leader of the High Impact team, along with John Newcomer. And so this was kind of like our first solo project.
I think they have complementary skill sets.
We're symbiotic in a way. Certainly in the first few games, it was just like we just knew what the other person was looking for. And I don't know that we ever... if we had an argument, it certainly wasn't about the work that we were doing. We just seemed to know what the other person was looking for.
They worked well because they trusted each other's talents enough to say, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about. Ed took care of all the programming. John took care of all the art.
They just had this unsaid, hey, it'd be fun? Yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it.
Working with Ed, one of his great strengths were just his focus, I think, and his ability to just grind and get things done. Ed, who was the sole programmer to create that game, in hindsight, was incredible.
For one programmer to do all those games is pretty amazing. And
his door is always open. He wants to hear new ideas. He's dangerously funny, where it just busts me up at least once a day.
He would just crack us up all the time, just his jokes, and he made it easy to work the long hours.
John is a really good storyteller. John has a history as a comic book artist. So I think that probably contributed to his ability to tell a compact story. The only story we had was a little paragraph that would play underneath the character doing a kata, but that was enough to really intrigue players.
You really gave a shit about it because of the backstory, because about the whole mythology that John Tobias had created. Maybe not unlike WWF or something, almost like Star Wars in martial arts.
The first game truly was like an expression of just who we were at the time. We were in our early 20s, the stuff that we consumed growing up as kids, and we just threw it all into the game. There was nobody telling us what to do, how to do it.
I think it was a great partnership, and I think, what can you say? Success beyond belief.
fighting games have proven themselves to be strong collectors suitable for a wide range of locations. They embody the most attractive elements of the arcade experience: characters endowed with mythic powers, full player control, secret moves, and the kind of unbridled, head-to-head competition that compels repeat buy-in. Now from Midway comes Mortal Kombat. It captures the most popular elements of the fighting game and adds more. More control, more powerful characters, more depth, more secret moves, and advanced digitized graphics, delivering the most realistic fighting action available. Begin Mortal Kombat by choosing one of 7 characters, each boasting an arsenal of unique talents. There's Johnny Cage, the brash Hollywood movie star; Kano, thief and mercenary; Raiden, the mythical thunder god; Liu Kang, the fighting Shaolin monk; Scorpion, a ninja warrior bent on revenge; Sub-Zero, the ultimate assassin; and Sonya, U.S. Special Forces soldier. Each player has 5 basic moves corresponding to the 5 action buttons. High punch, high kick, low punch, low kick, and a block. In addition to these moves, players will continue to discover new joystick button combinations. Each new technique provides another competitive edge. For example, moving the joystick away from your opponent while pressing the low kick button will result in this sweep kick. Moving the joystick straight down will put the player in a crouch. By then releasing the joystick and pressing low punch, you'll administer a devastating uppercut.
Johnny Cage wins. Excellent.
Secret moves play a big part in the success of any fighting game. Collections soar as players strive to develop a character's full fighting potential. Mortal Kombat has several times more secret moves than the nearest competitor. The button joystick combinations required to execute these moves are different for each character, as are the moves themselves. And each character's arsenal of secret moves offers unique tactical advantages. If you learn one of Sonya's secret moves, you'll be able to perform this devastating scissor throw. Learning to activate Raiden's secret weapon lets you fire lightning bolts at your opponents.
Raiden wins.
Victory is achieved by winning 2 out of 3 rounds. Players losing a match will have to buy in to continue.
Liu Kang wins.
Finally, winning 3 matches against paired adversaries will put you in the ring opposite Goro, a 4-armed, unstoppable titan, half human, half dragon. Should Goro be subdued, you'll engage the most deceptive and powerful opponent of all, Shang Tsung, the bloodthirsty emperor capable of instantly becoming any fighter he chooses. Conquer Shang Tsung, and you will have joined unfrequented ranks, those who have battled all adversaries, yet survived.
Test your might.
Every 5 matches during both 1- and 2-player games, you'll have a chance to test your strength and win bonus points by smashing progressively harder objects. Two-player mode allows true head-to-head combat. Players must rely on their fighting abilities, as well as a knowledge of their character's strengths, as they are matched against an opponent with different, but equally lethal, abilities. Each player selects a character and the match begins. The player losing the best-of-3 match will have the option of buying in to continue. The winning player will continue to play as long as he maintains a string of victories. Loser pays, winner stays. From a technical standpoint, operators will find even more to like. Mortal Kombat employs Midway's exclusive diagnostic package and a sensitive yet durable 8-way microswitch joystick. In addition, operators will want to be aware of a dip switch setting we've included, allowing them to temper the game to fit the requirements of a location. By simply flipping a switch on the CPU board, you're able to remove any depictions of blood that would otherwise appear in the game. Another dip switch will disable the most graphic secret moves. In this way, operators can be sure they're matching the game to the disposition of their clientele. Mortal Kombat is quite simply the most complete video fighting game available. It boasts the industry's most realistic graphics, digitized images of real martial arts experts, heroic characters more powerful than those found on any other fighting game, secret moves to learn and master, and fierce battles against titanic adversaries. All of these elements combine to make this game powerfully unique, the world's most advanced interactive fighting experience.
of that era kind of all had this level of secrecy to them. Mortal Kombat, I think, took that to a very extreme level.
You had to guess like the moves and how to figure out the codes.
I think Street Fighter did something like that, right? They didn't document any of the moves, so we took that same approach.
I think not having a move list, there was so much to explore, and you had no idea of what you were still missing. It was another thing, it built up so much mystique to the game.
But then we kind of extended it, right, with the fatalities and whatnots. Especially at the end with the character Dizzy, there was a certain amount of, you know, what are you going to do? You would see them trying to trigger something else. They knew that there was something secret in there.
The announcer's like, finish him! And you go up and go, boom. And you're like, damn it! I screwed up the fatality. It's like the worst feeling in the world.
And, you know, everyone was playing as Kano because in the early days before people, you know, knew what most of the moves were, Kano's moves were just, I don't know, move the joystick in a circle real fast and he'll turn into a ball and do it, or hit block and mash the buttons, I don't know.
First character I played was Kano, and I found the ball attack and the knife throw, and within the first day I found the fatality too.
Kano wins.
I was finding stuff right away.
I remember being in your office, and I remember you showing me what the button combinations were, and then you have to be standing this far away from the other character. And I remember thinking to myself, there's no way anybody's going to figure this out. No one's ever going to do this. And literally, like the first weekend, they figured it out right away. Yeah.
You know, the fatalities and special moves and things like those were things that you kind of had to trade around.
Because you'd hear people chattering like, oh, there's this move, and not having the internet at the time to go to, it made it very social.
If you knew something that wasn't, you know, widespread knowledge, you could take that down to the arcade and pull it out on somebody and really blow some mind.
So a lot of hand watching. Where did you stand? The most premium spots are literally right behind it, like right between two people, or on the corners, because those are the only spots where you were able to see the screen and people's hands at the same time.
There was so much in there, and it really requires a fan base to come together and share, to work together to play them and solve them and uncover the secrets and all that stuff.
I was always obsessed with those kinds of things. I was a big fan of Street Fighter, and there was this rumor that was not true that there was a character in there called Sheng Long. And I remember when we had started this game thinking, you know, we have to have a real secret character. And so there was a Sunday, and Scorpion was yellow, Sub-Zero was blue, and I went into the art program and tinted him green, made up these crazy rules in terms of how to find him, made him jump out occasionally and kind of tease you with his existence. Put it together in one day, didn't even tell John about it, and was just kind of wondering how many people are going to pick up on this. It became a bit of like a Bigfoot. Some people had sightings and some people didn't, because there was this one that was real and was rather difficult to find. It could give players a little bit of creative license to come up with something and say that they did see something else happening in the game.
The level of secrets that happened in those first few Mortal Kombat games kind of corresponds with the rise of the internet. And people started trading around like, hey, here's a list of, I think these are fatalities.
I remember going home to my dad's house, and he had internet. He had a CompuServe account. And I started just learning as much as I could. And I'm like, Dad, can I go back to the arcade? I want to try some of this stuff.
I made it my mission to test all that stuff out. And that became my calling. We need to investigate.
And I published my first FAQ, and it is the most inaccurate like piece of junk that is available. It's like shameful, but it's where I started.
And then, all these urban legends about Ermac and all these other alleged characters that it's kind of like, how the kids used to say back in the day, the negative worlds in Mario Brothers and Mario could go skiing. It's that kind of like, the kid equivalent of water cooler conversations.
People would come up with lore, lies
right.
of,
That's
of,
right.
I did this and that happened, and everybody's, and we just shut up.
A friend of mine in high school said he was cousins with someone who filmed for the game, and that there was a secret character that they had filmed. So I put it in my FAQ, and I trusted him, and found out way later he was just messing with me.
The people feeding in things that they'd want to see in the game would kind of blend in with what was really there. Sometimes you'd see a move and then it was gone. You'd be like, I swear this was in there. Did that really happen? Like, there was no way to capture it.
A friend of mine, his little brother, was playing the game and told me about Kano's laser beam.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember telling my friend's younger brother, there's no laser beam. He's like, no, I saw it. And so I know he's mistaken with what, I don't know what he saw, but he didn't see that. This mythology was being built by the player base. I think we understood that pretty early on, and Ed, more than anybody, I think really took advantage of that and kind of mess with the players with hiding stuff in the game.
Yeah, I remember somebody found one of Sonia's moves, and I foolishly changed it because I read it on a news group, thinking, yeah, I got the best of that.
And they did some devious things to keep a lot of those things secret. I think there was a revision of Mortal Kombat 2 where they just arbitrarily changed all the fatalities because everyone figured them out too fast. And it's maybe the most devious and mean thing they've ever done.
I remember thinking at that point, yeah, this internet thing has gotten, you can't defeat it. It's just too powerful.
One of the fun things about going to an arcade was, a lot of people didn't have the internet just yet. So people would show up with their copy of their FAQ. Once I was there and I saw someone with my guide, like my FAQ, and I was like, oh, where'd you get that? He's like, oh, the guy who wrote it sold it to me. And I was like, what do you mean sold it to you? I wrote it.
We had a Mortal Kombat comic book that John drew, and we were the ones stuffing the envelopes, and we started writing messages to players. Sonya has a slide move, She didn't have a slide move. Within a week, I was at, it was like Galen Orange or something arcade, and some guy was playing Sonya, just keep trying these things. And one of the guys said, what are you looking for? And he goes, I'm looking for Sonya's slide move, Poor guy was, looking for it. But we were just adding fuel to that fire.
Most of those secrets went unknown to me until much later in life when walkthroughs on YouTube became a thing. And I was like, whoa, I totally missed a lot of stuff in a lot of games.
To us, secrets were basically replay value, and that was the most important thing for us. Having more to do with the game, having more to discover, more to enjoy.
We love the idea of, just this question mark over the game. What else is in there that nobody else has found? And it just made the game that much more mysterious, right?
So when Street Fighter 2 came out, I wasn't really too impressed by it. I think I finished it once, picked Zangief because I was a wrestling fan, and then kind of moved on. I eventually kind of fell in with a crowd that really got a lot out of Street Fighter 2, and so suddenly it became very apparent I need to get great at that game. One guy showed up and said, "Hey, have you heard of this other game, Mortal Kombat?" I'm like, no. What is Mortal Kombat? And he said, "Well, you know, it's like Street Fighter, but you can fucking kill people." Okay, well, we need to go see this game right now.
I absolutely remember the first time I played Mortal Kombat. It was at Lions Family Fun, my favorite arcade.
My dad would usually give my brother and me $5 each and let us run wild while he went shopping.
I was at an arcade in Virginia. The Q Lounge in the Bronx, New York. It was a space that was half smoky pool hall, half arcade.
He took us to an arcade 2 towns north, up to Santa Rosa. There was a place called Systems City. And it was like part skate shop, but in the back room, all the lights were off, and they had like 5 arcade machines back there.
I see this huge crowd gathered around a new cabinet.
And it was sitting there. There was nobody around it.
No one was playing it. It was just sitting there. What is this? I just remember just like a big line around the cabinet.
Everyone is crowded around Mortal Kombat. It is simultaneously exactly like and nothing like Street Fighter. You know, the film, the presentation, the real actors and actresses and all of that really just, it's so striking.
In Mortal Kombat, when you're seeing those 2 big characters on the screen, I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Instantly, it was like, oh, it's digitized. It's real people. It was like, wow, this is incredible. It's like, how are they doing this? How did this game come to be?
I was blown away by how it looked because it was a violent, bloody game. Like, that's the first time I'd seen blood in a video game that I remembered.
Even from a basic high punch, you just see blood flying out of these people's heads.
Liu Kang wins.
Even if I couldn't do the specials of certain characters, I could fall into a rhythm that just felt so good. Just like, you know, air kick, uppercut. And I was, I feel like the baddest motherfucker in the world.
In a time where you didn't see that kind of stuff in games and especially in arcades where kids were, you know, running around with their parents and parents were still freaking out too, kind of seeing what was happening.
My dad came up behind me. I didn't know this at the time, but the screen went dark. Kano ripped out a heart and held it up, blood dripping from it. And my dad went, "Oh, no, and whisked me out of the arcade. And that's when I knew I had to play that game because I was not allowed to play that game.
People getting chopped in half and torsos being dismembered.
Liu Kang wins. Flawless fatality.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that in a video game. I didn't know that was allowed in a video game.
And we're, you know, 16, 17 at the time, so this is the most exciting thing in the world.
The endings and how every character had, even though Street Fighter, they had an ending, but Mortal Kombat was like the first thing that really affected me that was like, I really want to play all these characters to see what happens. And this is before YouTube, so it wasn't like you could just go on YouTube and watch it. You had to, you know, earn it, right?
What's Kano's backstory? You know, what about Sonya? That's what we wanted to know about. And, you know, they specified a lot of it kind of in, you know, various screens and whatnot. You know, we were hooked.
But it didn't take long from there for that game to be literally everywhere. Every single pizza place, 7-Eleven arcades, the arcades that were left at that point, all of them had a Mortal Kombat machine probably within a month.
The idea to produce a comic book for the first MK game, that started with me. Coming from comic books, I had a great desire to sort of tell this story that we weren't able to tell in the game. And so I thought, what better place to do it in a comic book? I talked to Ed about it, and so Ed thought it was a great idea, and I think the both of us went to Roger Sharp to try to see if there was any money that we could get from marketing to help us produce this comic book.
I tried to always do stuff that I thought would be special, and John, pulled together, there's a comic book.
I wasn't getting paid anything extra to draw this comic, so I wrote the story and did the illustrations. Roger was able to scrape up, I think, a few $1,000s for the printing, and we were able to produce a few thousand copies of this comic, and we weren't sure how many we were going to sell. There was an advertisement in the game, and players would see the advertisement in the track mode, and they would mail in a check for $3. Sometimes they would mail cash. Ed and I would get bags of envelopes, sent to a P.O. box, and they would ship us these boxes of comics. Okay, well, who's gonna pack and mail these things? And so there was nobody to do that, so Ed and I ended up sitting in his office with boxes of comics. We were the ones opening each envelope, collecting the money, writing the addresses on the envelopes, packing the comics, and mailing them all out. I remember we did that one weekend, it was just Ed and I. And then we decided, we invited other people around the office, like, hey, come and help us pack the comics, and we'll buy a pizza. Every once in a while I would sign one. We picture on the envelope, little messages to the players. I don't know if anybody ever saved any of that stuff. But eventually I think we were in over our heads because the stuff just kept coming.
And sales took off. We had to go back in and reprint the comic book.
And then eventually Roger, I think, handled, I don't know who he paid to do the packing and the mailing and stuff.
We were packaging and boxing up, thank you, Jeanette and Alice, to get everything out to people.
But the first, I think, few thousand comic books were hand-packed and hand-addressed by, Ed and myself and a couple of the other folks around the office.
And that was the start of the merchandising program for Mortal Kombat.
The first time I saw a crowd gathered around a Mortal Kombat cabinet when I was 10 told me that, okay, this game is a big deal at my arcade. I had no idea if that translated outside my arcade. Then Mortal Monday happened. Not just the day itself, but the build up to it.
Seeing the zeitgeist around it was huge. Conversations around Mortal Monday were happening, the first kind of big marketing push.
Acclaim was clearly, they knew what they had in their hands, and so they were doing a much bigger effort in promoting it. I remember them telling us that they were going to spend $10 million to advertise this game. And I remember saying, you know, are you sure you want to put that kind of money behind this? And you know, in retrospect, of course that was a great decision. But I remember being really paranoid thinking, you know, that they were putting a lot on this game.
The preparation for the release of Mortal Kombat was just massive. I was working at Babbage's Software. Pre-sales had started early, so like we knew we were going to be just selling out. It was all I could talk about.
I remember going to see a movie, I can't remember which film it was, and they were advertising Mortal Mondays, which was one of the greatest marketing blitzes in video game history. And it was just, you know, all these random kids yelling in the middle of a city street, Mortal Kombat, right?
That commercial with like people running down the street screaming Mortal Kombat, and they were teens, and I was a little kid, and teens are the coolest thing you could be when you're a little kid.
You don't have to show screenshots or anything else necessarily. Everybody knew. All you have to do is just have somebody out in the middle of the street just putting up his arm saying Mortal Kombat. It's almost like, hi, it's here. It sells itself.
We were all like, yo, did you see that Mortal Kombat commercial? What is Mortal Kombat? And there was always like one kid who knew a little more. It's a video game, but you kill people. And all of us at Maplewood Elementary School were like, whoa!
We had 2 front monitors that were just showcasing Mortal Kombat videos. And
in the comics, on the back of the comics, there were Mortal Monday ads. There were Mortal Kombat ads in magazines. There were Mortal Kombat ads in subways.
You know, just seeing the standees and the posters and things at Times Square and
the signage that was coming in, every piece of memorabilia that was coming in, and t-shirts, and it was just over the top compared to other games.
I remember just being nervous about it, thinking, I hope this game lives up to it. Even though it was never know all.
Ed. It was insane. There was a giant line, and it was just so exciting.
That's when I realized, like, this is actually a bigger deal than maybe any video game that's come before it. Mortal Kombat became a pillar of popular culture within 12 months. It was, I think, the fastest a video game had ever exploded to date.
Nothing could prepare you for it. It was, it was just insane.
We were aware that Acclaim had a deal that they were going to do all the home games, because also they had done Super High Impact for the home. And Acclaim had their kind of production group, which was our main point of contact, but then they had the two software houses, you know, Probe and Sculptured. And so there was a lot of communication that had to kind of bounce back and forth.
Probe offered me Mortal Kombat on the Mega Drive, the Genesis version, and I said yes. I'm free. I'm available. Like, a job's a job, and I said, well, what is it? They were able to kind of actually bring me an arcade machine into my house. And kind of started playing it, and I thought, well, this looks easy enough.
When Mortal Kombat 1 was going to be made for the Super Nintendo, through Sculptured Software, we had a programmer that was from outside our place, and brought him in and said, hey, you're the main guy. And that did not go as well as we would have wanted it to go.
Tests were right.
Ed and I would get versions of the game, and so I would give feedback in terms of the pixel art as best I could. Of course, the home games at the time, they didn't have quite the capabilities that we did in the arcade.
I think the biggest problem that we had wasn't as much the power of the machine, but how big the memory of the Mega Drive was. In A, we had to shrink all the sprites really down as much as we possibly could, and there's a lot of frames of animation in there. You know, we started off by kind of basically taking out every other frame, and that wasn't enough. So then we had to take out like 3 out of 5 frames, and then kind of concentrate on the important animations, the ones that let you see. Williams have like a method of writing. It's almost like a kind of multi-threading. It's like that there's a number of different programs all operating at the same time. So one of those programs operates one of the characters, one program operates one of the weapons, one of them operates the background, and all of those different little programs kind of speak to each other. That isn't a method of programming I had any experience of. It took me a while to work it out. And kind of Probe were getting very nervous because there wasn't anything on the screen. I was working and working. There wasn't anything on the screen. And then eventually I was able to basically kind of translate the original code almost line by line. It kind of worked, and the whole thing kind of came to life. What it meant as well, though, was that it was very accurate, very close to the original arcade version in terms of how it feels playing it. So everyone was then very happy with me, which was great.
Genesis played much better, and it had the blood, the abacab, and all that.
Get over here!
Super Nintendo version looked great, but it didn't play as good as the Genesis version.
The programmer that was the lead, but he made some missteps at the beginning of the project, and it was really hard to finish. These were conversions. These were not original games. You're trying to take the code and the assets and port it to that platform. They had this little multi-processing system in there. He said, I don't like the way that works. I want to do it my way. So he's going against the grain the whole time.
Johnny Cage wins.
The quality of the game was something that that was important to us. I know Ed was a stickler in terms of what he was willing to approve.
Come here!
And we were down to the wire. We were, saying that we're not going to prove it until you fix this, this, and that. And
I ended up having to help him, so it got done, but it didn't. It played not quite as well.
They needed to build millions of cartridges, and there's lead times involved with that. And so those two things kind of conflicted a couple times, and there was some tension there.
Mustard and myself grew up in a really small town. The closest thing you would have to an arcade machine is the local bowling alley may have had like a light gun game, but that's pretty much it. It was only the home versions that allowed us to experience the different franchises, and I feel like I unofficially speak for quite a lot of people our age, how important getting those home versions as good as they were was. So that the rest of us could still experience it in different parts of the world, that arcades weren't as common, especially those small towns.
Which side was I on in the home versions? There's only one side. Like, what do it's just the Genesis version. There's only one version of the game. The Super Nintendo version is a travesty by comparison.
I actually thought that even though the Genesis was a little behind graphically than the Super Nintendo, I liked the grittier look of the Genesis version. It really felt kind of down and dirty the way Mortal Kombat should.
I mean, also the Genesis version had the blood code. And the real fatalities and the Dullard code and all the other cool stuff in it. I think that made up for like the music in the Genesis version being really hokey and some of that other stuff.
My friend had a Genesis. They got Mortal Kombat. His mom would come in every now and then just to look at the screen to make sure there was no blood flying.
Finish him.
And so what we would do is we would enter the blood code, we'd play a match or two, and then we'd hit reset, turn off the blood code, keep playing when she came in, and then she'd leave and we'd turn the blood code back on.
Nintendo screwed the pooch when they didn't allow the blood in the game, and they instead put sweat in it, which the Genesis version outsold the SNES version like 3-1 or something like that. Everybody wanted the violence, you know, they wanted the blood.
The Super Nintendo version feels like mud. Like the act of playing that game is so unlike playing the actual arcade game.
So I really wanted Mortal Kombat. Not just to fit in, but because I loved it. I wanted it so bad, but my family didn't have a ton of money. So I scraped together all the money I had, and I was able to finally afford Mortal Kombat for the Game Boy. And that game is a experience. When you play Mortal Kombat in the arcade, it's a little bit heavy and you feel the power of those hits. Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy moved like two frozen people were slowly trying to get close enough to hug. Like when you'd push the punch button, it would eventually move the fist forward a little bit at maybe 1 frame per minute. I cannot do a fatality in this game. I know for a fact they exist because the computer can do the fatalities on that pit level. Instead of having them fall off the stage onto spikes, at the end of each part of the level were just little drawn spikes in the background that you could knock them onto. And I think that was their like makeshift solution for having a stage-based fatality. Even as a kid, I knew it was not the best version, but I loved it so much. I even put in a Game Genie code that let you play as Goro. Like, I did every secret possible. I was going to squeeze every single dollar I put into that game. And I still own it, and I'll still play it occasionally because I'm kind of a masochist. But there's something special about it. There's something that's kind of like pure about a Mortal Kombat game that's so weird and watered down and slow that it almost circles back around to being kind of creepy and mysterious.
I mean, they may not have been like arcade perfect, but to us, we didn't know any better. We didn't have anything to comparison. All we cared about was just, you know, play the game, have fun with it, you know, and enjoy what we were doing. And that was about it.